Hello everyone, my name is Karen Virkar, and my policy issue is on the United States narrowing but persistent gender pay gap. According to research, the gender pay gap cannot be fully explained by a set of measurable variables when controlling for factors such as experience, education, industry, and hours. And these are the factors why it is said that the pay gap continues to persist today. The debate on the equal pay gap revolves around a few different arguments, including why the gender pay gap exists, why the gender pay gap doesn't exist or has narrowed, why it is persistent, and why it shouldn't remain persistent and should soon be completely diminished. And some background history is that the gender pay gap came into existence during World War II. During World War I was when the number of women added to the labor force did not very much exceed 100,000 annually, but during World War II, 5 to 6 million women were added to the American labor force. Prior to these wars, women were considered second-class citizens, and historically that was a societal norm. Since women were not breadwinners and they did not hold jobs, they were considered second-class citizens. Also, women and children were usually categorized under the same one category, whereas males had their own separate category. Some of the federal and state actions that were taken on equal pay were definitely post-World War II. Post-World War II resulted in the Bureau of Ordnance of the War Department stating that the standard of wages prevailing for men in the process should not be lowered when women render equivalent service. So basically, in other words, that means that if a woman is given the same job, the men's pay shouldn't be decreased, rather the women's pay should be increased in order to match the men's pay. Two of the states that were first to pass equal pay laws in 1919 were Michigan and Montana. So the above action was federal, and then the below action for Michigan and Montana were state actions regarding equal pay. One significant act that was passed was the Equal Pay Act of 1963. The United States Congress took a bold step of condemning gender-based wage discrimination in 1963 by passing this act. It was signed into law on June 10th, 1963 by John F. Kennedy as a part of the New Frontier program. The act ensured that both men and women would be getting paid the same amount of money while working a job that requires the same amount of skill or effort. One major factor is marriage and motherhood, which are the factors why women get paid less. Maternity leave plays a huge role into this. The fear of hiring female employees came from the fact that females who bear children and that they can't be relied upon for the jobs due to the factor of maternity leave, whereas male is more reliable because he doesn't bear children. Women with multiple children already did not receive the same benefits compared to women with no children. Studies indicated that the United States lagged in the area of family policies such as maternity leave and the Child Care until the Family and Medical Leave Act in 1993 was passed. And then prior to this act, the United States had not many national maternity leave policies, so that's why this act is very significant. When it comes to narrowing the gap, studies show that the trend that the gross pay did not narrow significantly between 1955 and 1982 because the average sex differential in productivity-related characteristics did not narrow. One reason for why the gap began to narrow over the years was that women's human capital arose because women increased their investment in education and reduced their time out of the labor market. So basically that's saying that women began to join the labor force more and more. Right? According to the Pew Research Center's analysis of median hourly earnings of both full and part-time workers in the United States, women earned 84% for every $1 made by men in 2012. And then in 2017, the equal pay gap widened to where a woman earned 82% of what men earned, and that ratio varies per race. The wage gap would not narrow any further over time unless productivity of women in the labor force increased relative to that of men, or unless discrimination in the workplace diminished. So these statistics showing that in 2012 the gap was 84 cents to $1, and then in 2017 it was 82 cents to $1. That basically shows it's very persistent. So instead of increasing, it went down like 2 cents, but it hasn't like narrowed any further than that in 2018. To conclude, based on my research, the gender pay gap continues to remain persistent today, but protesters continue to battle for the equal pay gap to be narrowed further or for it to be diminished completely. All right, and here are my sources. Thank you for listening to my presentation.